years ago. If I'm watching an episode of Friends, and Jennifer Aniston, sorry, I'll say somebody else, Chandler Bing has a shirt on that I like, I want to be able to buy that shirt right away, right? I want instant gratification. I don't want the disruption of an ad swinging in front of me. I want to be able to make a decision and connect that decision that I'm making from the linear experience to the digital world. So what if I can look at every image that I'm seeing on the screen and it becomes a consumable item? If it is productized and is something that could be sold, give it to me. Let me get access to it. Use a QR code, embed it, use fingerprinting, watermarking. There's lots of different technologies we can do, but somehow it is possible and it will happen.
So in product design, designing a new product, we go into augmented reality and layer people that are purchasing. So we create an excitement for purchasing. You wear the glasses and see who's buying what on the screen.
And your Facebook page will tell you that everybody else that bought the same item, that's a friend of yours, and they'll tell you if they just checked in at the store where you're buying a similar item. I mean, the possibilities of that cross-pollination are endless.
Creating a different kind of engagement, not just passive viewing.
Yeah, and I would say also, Ben, on the embed links. So what we do is we use a combination of play links and embed links, not to get some of the technology per se here, but the embed links, that is a great opportunity to be able to, like as Jim was mentioning as well, to really embed this content. In particular, what we're focused on is embedding the actual commercial. Now, the next step would be to some interactivity on that commercial, but it's all about the user experience. If you're, as I mentioned, Jim mentioned, if you're waiting 8 seconds after a commercial loads to watch your content, that's not going to work. So the embed link has to be a quick, using the same player, has to be a quick handoff. And then you have to have the functionality to be able to, if it's IP based, like all this is, you need to be able to click on that to have more of a social experience and more of an e-commerce experience. That might be a little bit ways down the line, but the embed experiences now, it just depends on how you fine-tune the user experience. And I think it goes back to a user experience as far as how you monetize these things from a content provider standpoint and from a measurement standpoint, really from a delivery standpoint.
And from that content processing standpoint, elementalization, scene analysis that picks out the elements on the fly, and some of it's going to be pre-coded in metadata, others going to be handled on the fly. But Jerry, when we look at some of these trends, this leads us, the next step is in gamification elements and things like that. Are you hearing any interest, especially by millennials and Gen X? We've got a lot of Gen Xers here. A few boomers like myself, but mostly Gen X and a few millennials here that might be interested in creating a different pattern of their passive viewing experience into gamification.
Well, I think the interactivity is going to be a big thing. We're going to start to see it, and I keep going back, or a second going back to the Olympics. It's a point in time that's almost like an experiment on where it's a pulse check on where we are from a technology standpoint, where we are from a media consumption standpoint. So there'll be a means. So you're going to have there's going to be a huge Facebook presence around that. So athletes will have fans. You'll be following it. Did you agree with the judge? How you would have scored that jump? I mean, all these things you're going to start to see these people interact now in this whole idea. I mean, I remember last World Cup when the United States was getting basically had a lot of bad calls. If you went and checked Twitter, there were people calling for the ref's head. I mean, it was like this giant outcry. And now you take that and you put it into you take that and you multiply that by 10. When you're talking about the Olympics, we're going to see a huge level of interactivity on that. And when you think about regular media, there was a report out today, or an article that interviewed Martha Stewart. And you're starting to see now celebrities of that caliber can move an audience. They don't necessarily have to be attached down to a TV network. They can be their own brand online and generate almost a network on themselves. So, I could launch Jerry's network tomorrow and have all this content with it and have get a following people. And so this is what we're going to begin to see, is that this whole this whole ecosystem is going to start to break down a little bit, and you're going to start to see it become you're going to become your own.
And Jim will watch that, Jim. Martha Stewart interview is on All Things D today. I encourage you to look at that because you can see that seeds of independence. This is not like idiot Metallica who defends the people that are ripping them off in the artist community. This is much more like some of the other artists that have sought creative opportunity here. And Martha Stewart almost stating that it's new retail and new video. It's not television anymore. That's the hallmark element in it. So I encourage you to watch that. Any other comments before we move? Go ahead.
No, it was really good, and and I think we're going to start to see more and more of that. As it becomes more prevalent to have social interacting with commerce, interacting with content, and really the lines are going to blur greatly, and you're not going to be able to tell the difference at some point.
That's an absolute, very critical point because we keep looking from salvaging the industry or transforming the industry instead of blowing apart the industry, which may be happening. I'd like to open now to questions, comments, or insults from the audience that you may have for our distinguished, august panel. Yes?
I have a question for Jerry. I have 2 teenage kids, and they think TV is lame. I mean, seriously lame. So how do you guys study the millennial generation?
The content or the experience?
Both. I mean, they think commercials, unless it's a really good commercial, they.
Well, and that's the question, how are you going to attract those guys? Because your kids are not going to, dealing with the same commercials that everyone on TV does. So as a marketer, they're looking at ways like, how do I make them happy? But then again, following that audience is also an important piece because they're not, they may never watch TV online. They may never have a cable subscription. They may have, by the time they're out of your house, they may say, you know what, I'm just going to watch everything online.
Well, they do that already. They do it.
Yeah, and this is where,
we were looking at the television and they were looking at their telephone.
and so I don't know how many people went to CES this year, but all the TVs were connected TVs, had applications.
Exactly.
Apple went up on, just the prospect that they're going to start testing an iTV in the near future. So when you think about that, and you take that, let's extrapolate that out, and it's not far away. I mean, you think about it. iPad's only been out for 2 years. I mean, you only had an iPhone for 4 years. So, we're talking about very limited time when you can see this changeover, that the entire ecosystem changes within, essentially within, 1,000 days.
CES last year had a plethora of 3D TVs too, Jerry. So
see, the TV, the 3D TV thing was crazy because it's like you gotta get glasses, and it was like way too much.
You have
Now,
kids, they break the glasses, like they're
Get a headache watching.
now you have an app. Everyone knows what an app, or most people know what an app is. Now I have a big TV, and now basically I have a big iPad on my wall. Like, okay, I can do some fun stuff with that. And the other important thing, I just want to make one other point, which I think is interesting, is that the Motorola merger, or the Motorola acquisition by Google happened this week, or last week. One of the things that no one really talks about, they also talk about the phone, and phones are cool and everything else, realize that Motorola also has a huge set-top box business, that now you can start to integrate Google TV into that. Now, the MSOs may say, over our dead body, but still, you put it on the back end, and you have all the set-top box capabilities with Google TV and integrated.
you look at Scientific Atlanta and GI and others, it's been amazing how they've had the ruby slippers all along and never used them. Letters, yes.
I ask a question every other year, so if you all could comment. When am I going to get a la carte on my TV or my device so I don't have to pay for everything that MSOs charge?
Let me augment that question by saying we use that term OTT a lot. Some of it is institutional OTT and some of it is independent. Can you speak to those trends in Xfinity versus indie distribution?
Yeah, I can chime in on some of that as well. Of course, you guys as well. The OTT in its purest form is going straight to the consumer without going through the set-top, essentially. Going to the mobile device or even the PC, it's all OTT. It's Netflix, potentially Google TV, Apple TV, etc. The TV everywhere, as Jim had noted, right? It's more of an authenticated service to extend the reach of the service provider. But this is some interesting dynamics that are going on right now, and it really goes back to the content rights that Jim, I'm sure, knows much more than I about this. However, content rights. Where is the content allowed to be viewed? And so from an a la carte perspective, it really comes down to a business model from what are the digital rights. And also, from Jerry's perspective, the advertising. Google and Apple, they have to come up with a lot of money to match the royalty fees and the carriage fees, license fees that they pay to the Turners and others of the world in order to be able to get current content. There's a Nielsen measurement called C3. Within the C3, that's where your highest CPMs are, that's current content. Then there's the long tail. The long tail is what you're beginning to see more so on Netflix and the over-the-top. So the question is, in my mind, and we started at the top of the conversation, is OTT going to be competitive or complementary to the typical MSO cable model and the TV everywhere model? And that, I think the jury's still out on that. I think smart people, like the Turners, and especially ESPNs of the world, that they're leaders in the mobile space for sure. They're trying to do both. They're trying to capture the CPMs, and Jim will talk more about this than I can, but they're trying to capture high CPMs on the set-top, and then milk the CPMs through the long tail on alternate platforms like mobility. And in the best case, you will have complementary content on two different platforms. In fact, there is I have a statistic that I forgot to mention, that 86% of mobile device users, smartphone users, tablet users, etc., surf and watch video on those devices when they're watching TV.
Jim, do you have any?
Well, it's interesting about the DRM. What we're facing with right now around regulation is what's happening with closed captioning, and what we have to be able to get prepared for about 6 years from now is what we're focused on, which is, to Jerry's point, probably a little ahead of the sand. Does everybody know what CPM is? No, it's cost per 1,000 impressions. So the CPM is the factor that we use to basically determine how much that ad space is worth, how much those impressions are worth. And I guess I'm going to answer your question too with another question. Do you have a Mac or a PC? PC. You have a PC. Microsoft's counting on the fact that you are going to someday drop your iPhone and pick up your Nokia Lumia that they just launched, or one of their Windows Phone 8s that's coming out in a couple weeks, because there's 700 million PCs in the US that can, if they can access all those desktop users and convert them into mobile users, you'll get to a la carte a heck of a lot quicker. So think about a Windows Phone.
I wonder if that's how they go mobile, though, if they stick with that form. Jerry, any changes in metrics or measures that are going to, we seem to apply old web measures, we seem to apply old web experience metrics in here. Clearly, Nielsen's got to help.
Yeah, we're in the process now of really trying to get the industry to change their thinking on how online media is bought and sold. That today it's been it's impressions, buy X number of impressions. We don't think that's the way to go. I mean, we've come out with several new products. One is this thing called online campaign ratings, where we basically measure the advertisement in a partnership with Facebook. So it basically uses the fact that you stay logged into Facebook, and we're able to look at the demographics of the ad that was viewed. And that's really the way, so basically what the brands are saying, the people who advertise, pay the money, not the agencies, but the actual guys who write the checks, are saying, online, I don't know what my ROI is. I don't know if I'm getting, if I'm attracting, if I want to send, 18 to 24-year-old women, I have no clear metric that says my money, my media dollars from online are going to those people. So there's we're trying to revamp this whole idea behind it. That said, there's also the idea of cross-media, because now if you want to be effective in your advertising, you've got to be able to do cross-media in a lot of cases. So if you're a Pepsi and you're really pushing out a new campaign, Pepsi's a bad example.
Don't use that word here.
I think you shouldn't do that. If you're Kraft, let's say, and you've got a new energy bar that you want to push out and you want to go cross-media with it, you want to buy it on TV, you want to buy online, you want to buy mobile. How do you measure the effectiveness across those mediums? We have a lot of data that shows mobile is much more effective, Well, is that because it's new and exciting, or that is just because it really is like that? So this whole cross-media effectiveness and cross-media campaigns, and like, are those working? So we're really trying to be forward-thinking and figure out exactly how this is going to work in the future.
You know, and I'll also, I'm sorry, chime in as far as the measurement. You're looking at a cross-platform approach. You know, the Nielsen numbers, of course, you can use. As what we do as well as from a specific mobile campaign perspective, because we really are becoming more of a mobile video ad company as far as inserting these ads into the content for our content providers. You can also capture a lot of very robust data right off the server, right off the streamer. All the consumption data across multiple mobile devices right off the streamer from the actual platform as well. So that's ready now. But like Jerry was saying, if you want a cross-platform view, then you need something a little bit more robust.
Well, and there's a new thing that's going on. You're starting to see it roll out a lot of media companies this year. The ability to do dynamic ad insertion, on the fly. So if I know based on your history that I can infer either your age or your sex or something else about you, I'm going to give you a certain ad versus another ad. So you may get, you may get the Volkswagen ad versus the Porsche ad. So there's all these different elements you can look at and say, in my content realm, there's companies, there's multi-million-dollar companies who are building this type of technology that can say, here's all the ads I have, who are you? Boom, you get this ad. Boom, you get this ad. And mobile is a good medium for that because your time on mobile is so valuable. You don't want to waste that time. So you want to get the right ad for the right person.
So, somehow the eye is to shift from impressions to influence and measure that as well. Yes.
I mean, isn't there something we said about, we talk about the narcissism of Facebook, where you do what you like, you hang out with who you like, and videos like that. I watched my 3-year-old daughter introduce my father-in-law to Netflix today on the iPad. She was scrolling through, and of course she wants to watch Peter Griffin, which I'm not real thrilled about. And she wants to see, well, no. She's got older brothers and sisters that like it, but she wants to see the Peter Show. And he's looking for the old Dick Van Dyke or 50s cowboy movies. So we all view what we like.
Classic movies.
Exactly. But doesn't that make it easier for the ad revenue to say, okay, you're in this group, you're pulling from YouTube or Google or Netflix the things you like, and you hang around the things that you like. So, I mean, I would think from an ad revenue stream, you're getting a better quality of customer.
Well, you are, and that's what they want to look at. So I don't want to waste a second time getting into something you don't want. If I know that I have a 65-year-old male, they're not going to get flowery girl ads. They're going to get something else. Or if I know that I have a 15, to this point, if I know if I have a bunch of 15-year-old boys, here's what you're going to get besides something else that you book a Budweiser ad, which you don't want to have.
I think the key as well is it's about the consumption of the ad set. If you can measure the direct consumption of that content, the inferences you can draw for targeted advertising. In fact, that's what we do. We understand when we stream content, what the consumption is on that content in real time, and then dynamically stitch an ad in for that consumption use case. Now you layer in demographics, like Jerry was saying, and then across platforms, you got a real robust picture for monetization for very high CPMs.
I'd like to take another question, and then I want to give our panel each a minute for summary comments, but please come in.
The main sponsor there is an operator. You guys haven't mentioned the operator. And he knows who that customer is, what his phone number is, where he lives, how old he is, male or female. Don't they play any role here at all?
They're limiting the data right now, though. They're going back to metered plans.
You look at all the numbers I put up throughout for mobile video, the majority of that is being consumed over our Wi-Fi network.
That
When you're at home.
So you don't have a strategy for paying the customer who pays gigabytes. I mean, the phone is subsidized. The phone is subsidized typically, all these smartphones that you mentioned. They're on a 2-year plan, you know who they are.
But one-third of all smartphone traffic gets offloaded into, off the cellular network at some point in the transaction.
But you
So
still
that
know
Wi-Fi.
You still know who the user is.
But the carriers are under, they have way more restrictions on what they
Well, they
can
won't
use.
share it.
And they won't share it. For the, I mean, and I know a lot about this, for their lack of trying not to be a dumb pipe, they have by default become a dumb pipe.
Yeah, they won't share that data for privacy reasons, and also, why would they? Because they want to use that for their own business models. You know, I would say, but to your point about the, you know, and I would take the opposite approach, because our platform streams over the 3G and 4G network, and we're seeing, we're talking to one of, I guess you could call them at least the top 2 sports content companies, and they're streaming 25 million streams a month, and that's all going over 3G, all going over 4G. There's some limitations with Wi-Fi from a technology perspective, but there's still a lot of streaming going over Wi-Fi. But to your point about the carriers, they're not getting a dime off of that. We're streaming over their network, and the only thing they're seeing is bits.
And I'll say this, the CNN app worked really well over the carrier. No, it really did. I was watching it on the bus the other day, and I'm like, I was impressed. I'm like, this was really good.
Thank you.
So actually, oh, sorry, go ahead, sir.
I think I finished.
I was wondering, just raise of hands, during the presidential election in 2008, does anybody remember what Cisco and CNN did that was sort of groundbreaking? Caroline?
They streamed the inauguration live.
That was one, but there's a second one. Cisco, go ahead.
Was it a hologram?
It was a hologram.
Right.
We had a hologram of somebody announcing the results, you know, right there in the room. Holographic technology is out there. That's
Yeah, we all make money, guys, for that.
It was a little fuzzy, you're right. Yeah, we were too ahead of our time.
One last question. Jim, you started by asking a question about how many people like 8-second ad, 10-second ad, 15-second ad. You are a national media company. Your turnover to reach nationwide, worldwide.
International.
Your sales force is situated in New York, in big cities, and you are married to the Madison Avenue. That's why when we go to your website or to the online mobile, you see the same national ads over and over and over and over, to a point of annoyance that people abandon looking at CNN video. Maybe I do, but many others may also do the same thing. So the problem is not with whether they tolerate 8-second or 15-second. It is the relevancy of the ad. And you, as a national media, are not set up to sell to the local relevant advertisers. Right?
It's interesting. No,
Now,
go ahead.
Look at the Apple, Google. They already have a huge millions of advertisers that use targeted advertising. Now, Bellsoft, AT&T, or Verizon, they already have the yellow page business for so many years, and they are all well situated to take on this hyperlocal advertising. So, are you able to break into that business, being a national media company?
Yes, we are able to, but it's interesting. You're right. CNN as a brand, mobile brand specifically, we don't buy into ad networks because we want to preserve the premium element of that CNN brand. But we might have to. We're going to have to change our stance on several positions if we're going to continue to survive the $80 billion ad.
And you guys are unique because you're one of the few media companies who don't use ad network.
That's rare.
That's rare.
And clearly, as we look at the transformation, those traditional roles are going to be upset and possibly transformed for each of you in each of your plays. Where you are 10 years from now might be an embarrassment when you think about where you are today in terms of how much you've changed. Can we have just a comment from each of you as a parting shot for our audience, a final word of wisdom and expression of aspiration or dread for the coming period? Jim, do you want to start?
So we all watch about 33 hours a week of mobile content. Whether we realize it or not, that's the average, 33 hours. Next week, when we release this Conan O'Brien app that I was referencing earlier, the app is actually going to begin to hear and listen to what Conan's saying, and then automatically bring you to the same exact spot that he is, and then start getting you integrated with the social content and your sharing, all of that companion application content. There's a step forward from that, And that's where we get into the dynamic ads, where if this device can listen to the television and match me up to where it is, then it can also listen to what I'm saying right now. And eventually we'll be able to take the words that I'm saying in an everyday standpoint. I might say the word Volkswagen in passing. I might say the word t-shirt to somebody sitting next to me. This device can hear that. Maybe it can also serve up ads just based off of what you're talking about. It's scary to think about. But if somebody asked you 10 years ago if the Palm Pilot was going to replace your stationery, you would have said no.
I hate X.
Thank you guys for having us too, for your time.
I will guarantee that 90% of you will be consuming media in a much different way next year than you are right now.
And I would say from a platform standpoint, I believe you're going to start seeing a convergence, use of an overplayed word perhaps, but you have two plants. You have the cable plant, you have the IP ecosystem. The IP ecosystem is very well suited for video. What we're seeing right now from a platform perspective is a convergence of mobile and desktop through one platform. In fact, we do that, for instance, where you can stream through one platform and get to any of these IP devices. As you get some of the Google TVs, Apple TVs, as you can fine-tune those business models, I believe that will also extend over to the set-top. And then you have a universal platform to do measurements and targeting.
Well, thanks. Certainly the edge is ever more the consumer and consumption decision rights, and a very fickle consumption issue, and that will have ever more election and ripple back down to all the way through the carriers to providers. It's going to be an interesting challenges going forward. So I'd like to thank our panel.